I had just gone through minor surgery, and the last thing I expected was a deadly warning. The doctor handed me a crumpled note with 3 chilling words: "Don't go home, run." I laughed thinking it was a sick joke until I opened the door to my apartment that night. Instantly, I knew someone or something was lurking in the shadows, and it was no joke. My name is Clara. I'm 35 years old, and until that terrifying night, my life was categorized as comfortably unremarkable. I live in a quiet, mid-sized city in upstate New York, working remotely as a technical writer for a medical software company. My existence was defined by predictable routines, morning runs, late-night edits, and takeout on Fridays. I live alone in a cozy 2-bedroom apartment that, despite its familiarity, suddenly felt like a deadly trap. My position in this narrative is the central character, the unsuspecting victim who becomes the key player. The doctor who handed me the note was Dr. Elias Thorne, a kind older man with a reputation for being meticulous but slightly eccentric. My brief interaction with him was professional, yet his eyes held a deep, unusual fear that I dismissed as fatigue. The other key person in my life, and the one whose behavior I would soon scrutinize, is my neighbor Mark. Mark is a retired police officer in his early 60s who lives across the hall. He's always been the neighborhood watch, overly protective, and always offering to help. I used to think of him as a friendly, slightly nosy grandfather figure. Now every friendly smile and over-the-top gesture from Mark was being reevaluated through a lens of suspicion, tinged with the cold dread of the doctor's warning. I had no family nearby, making my isolation, which I once valued as peace, feel terrifyingly exposed. My biggest underlying fear, the emotional landscape that made the doctor's warning so potent, was the absolute terror of helplessness and betrayal by a trusted figure. When I was 19, I was involved in a severe car accident caused by a close family friend who was driving under the influence. This person, whom I deeply admired and trusted, walked away virtually unscathed, while I spent months in grueling physical therapy. The trauma wasn't just physical. It was the psychological wound of realizing that people you rely on for safety can suddenly become your biggest threat, often with terrifying indifference. This experience left me hyper-vigilant and deeply sensitive to subtle shifts in behavior. I had an internal radar constantly scanning for discrepancies between what people said and what their eyes or body language suggested. This made me seem guarded, sometimes isolating. My face often carried a subtle look of reserve, a protective shield against unexpected harm. The car accident left a lasting mark on my body, to a slight, barely noticeable limp after a long day, which always reminded me of my vulnerability. I hated feeling weak, and I coped by becoming fiercely independent and highly structured. My current isolation wasn't just preference. It was a way to minimize the number of people I had to trust. When Dr. Thorne handed me the note, the instant surge of panic felt like the collision all over again. My hands trembled, holding the crumpled paper, and my expression must have mirrored the shocked confusion of that 19-year-old girl. This note didn't just warn me of a threat. It shattered the fragile sense of safety I had painstakingly rebuilt over 15 years, confirming my deepest, most agonizing fear, that danger doesn't always wear the face of a stranger. Sometimes it wears the mask of a helper or a trusted professional. The doctor's terrified, urgent glance, the unspoken plea in his eyes, only validated my long-held belief that beneath the surface of normal life, betrayal and peril lurk ready to consume the unsuspecting. Before the fateful note appeared, my life was a quiet, stable picture, painted with repetitive habits. My apartment always had a peaceful, cool, and organized atmosphere, reflecting my introverted and disciplined nature. Every morning, I brewed green tea, sat by the window, and started my writing job. Everything ran on a strict schedule, and this very predictability created a false sense of security. My relationships with others were light and minimal. I rarely interacted with neighbors except for Mark. Mark, the retired police officer across the hall, was the only character who routinely interrupted my isolation. He frequently knocked, bringing over freshly baked cookies or simply asking if I needed help fixing anything. These interactions initially brought a positive emotion, a small warmth of community. When he smiled, his eyes seemed kind, and I viewed Mark as an added layer of protection, an invisible security wall. I remember one instance when my house key got stuck. Mark immediately rushed over his hands, deftly fixing the lock in less than 5 minutes. He smiled brightly, his expression proud, and I felt a deep sense of gratitude. I trusted Mark implicitly, without any doubt. Before the surgery, I had told Mark I would be away for the day. He said he would watch my apartment for me. The air between us was completely comfortable, devoid of any tension or secrecy. I even left him a spare key, just in case a crucial package arrived. This was an act of complete faith in a neighbor. I had no idea that this very tranquility and trust was the fertile ground for a dark plot to germinate and grow, and that the simplicity and routine of my everyday life had made me an easy target. The hospital room was sterile, silent, and brightly lit, the perfect contrast to the chaos brewing beneath the surface. I was recovering from a minor procedure on my wrist, just waiting for the discharge papers. Doctor. Thorne walked in, his body language rigid, unlike his usual relaxed demeanor. He avoided my gaze while checking my vitals. He finished his check, mumbled something about follow-up care, and then, his hand subtly blocking the nurse's view, he pressed a small crumpled piece of paper into my palm. His eyes, finally meeting mine, were wide and desperate. They screamed urgency and a chilling kind of terror. Before I could speak, he leaned in, and his voice, barely a whisper, was hoarse. "Get out of the hospital now. Do not mention this to anyone. Go directly to a secure location. Don't go home, Clara. Run." My emotional reaction was instantaneous and deeply unsettling. The old 19-year-old trauma response, the feeling of the world tilting violently out of control, surged back. My heart hammered against my ribs, and my hands were clammy. I managed a weak, confused smile, but my expression must have been a frozen mask of disbelief. This has to be a mistake, a patient mix-up, a prank. I waited until the nurse left, then unfolded the note. The paper was clearly from a prescription pad, the writing quick-pressured and unmistakable. "Don't go home. Run." Underneath, in smaller, almost invisible print, was a single cryptic letter, M. The conflict exploded inside me. Rational. Clara tried to dismiss it. The doctor is stressed. He's retiring soon. He's cracking. But the survivor, Clara, the one honed by betrayal, heard the alarm bells. His fear was too authentic. His gesture too risky. A doctor wouldn't risk his license and career for a prank. I looked at the M again. My neighbor Mark, the friendly, helpful ex-cop, who knew my routines, who had a key, who knew exactly when I'd be vulnerable, recovering from surgery. The warmth I felt for him curdled into cold suspicion. My decision was instantaneous. I couldn't confront the doctor. That would put him and me in further danger. I had to follow the order. I grabbed up my belongings, left the discharge papers unsigned, and slipped out of the hospital through a side exit, my body moving with a strange, nervous energy. I didn't run home, but I did drive past my apartment building. I parked 2 blocks away, and using binoculars I kept in my trunk, I watched my window. The light was off as expected, but then I saw a gesture, a quick, almost imperceptible shadow move across the sheer curtain in my living room. Someone was inside. My breath hitched. That wasn't just a shadow, it was the confirmation. Mark, or someone Mark had let in, was waiting for me. The peace of my cozy apartment was shattered, replaced by the horrifying realization that my trusted protector was in fact the threat. The quiet life was over. The game was on, My entire life built on routine and control had just been reduced to 3 frantic pounding heartbeats of confirmation: the note, the doctor's eyes, and the shadow in my living room window. This was the turning point. The moment I shed the skin of the unsuspecting victim and adopted the necessary paranoia of the hunted. I sat in my car 2 blocks from my safe home, staring at the dimly lit facade of my apartment building. My mind, usually so structured, raced with a chilling question: why me and why Mark? The sheer audacity of the betrayal, the kind smiles, the baked cookies, the volunteered protection fueled a cold, clear anger that cut through the initial panic. I immediately recognized I couldn't go to the police. If Mark was an ex-cop, he likely had contacts, and the information I had was flimsy: a crumpled note and a fleeting shadow. I was still weak from surgery, and I was holding a piece of paper that could easily be dismissed as a delusion. I needed proof, and I needed to understand the why. My car, an old reliable sedan, suddenly became my command center. I executed my plan, moving with the precision I usually reserved for technical documents. Secure communication. I needed to contact Dr. Thorne, but not through official channels. I drove to a 24-hour convenience store, bought a burner phone and a prepaid card. My hands, still slightly tender from the surgery, shook slightly as I activated the cheap flip phone. Contacting the source. I called the hospital switchboard, asked to be connected to Dr. Thorne's private line, and when he answered, I didn't identify myself. I used a code word: the wrist feels fine. What should I do about the M? His response was immediate, low, and urgent, devoid of any pleasantries. The M means you have less than 12 hours. Go to the old mill parking garage, level P5. There's a loose cinder block near the emergency stairwell, painted green. There's something for you. Trust no one. I cannot talk again. He hung up instantly. The simple instruction, delivered with such dire certainty, confirmed everything. This was not a joke. It was a desperate, organized attempt to save my life. My gaze in the rearview mirror showed a woman whose expression had hardened from confusion to fierce resolve. I drove the 20 minutes to the abandoned old mill area. The parking garage was a maze of concrete, echoing and dark. As I ascended to P5, the atmosphere was heavy with dust and silence. Finding the green cinder block was unnerving. My body felt the strain of the surgery, but the adrenaline masked the pain. I lifted the block. It was heavier than I expected. Beneath it, wrapped tightly in duct tape, was a small military-grade flash drive. And pinned to the tape, another note. This one wasn't frantic. It was typed: "This proves the target. Find the motive." Holding that flash drive, I knew I had crossed a line. I was no longer running from a threat. I was actively engaging the enemy. My entire focus shifted from simple escape to calculated counterattack. I had the what proof of a target, and now I had to find the why. The fear was still there, but it was now a sharp tool honing my focus. I couldn't risk plugging the flash drive into any device I owned. Mark might have already compromised my home network. My first action was to find a secure, untraceable location. I drove to the outskirts of the city and checked into a cheap, nondescript motel under a fake name, paying cash. The room was dingy, but it offered anonymity. The motel room, with its stale smell and flickering fluorescent light, became my temporary war room. I used the motel's slow public computer, which was entirely off my personal network, to access the flash drive. My hands trembled with anticipation as the files loaded. It wasn't a spreadsheet of financial data or a list of conspirators. It was a single, highly compressed folder containing professional medical records, coded with a unique patient identifier. When I decoded the identifier using a simple online medical dictionary key, the horrifying truth began to unfold. The folder contained the records of several patients who had undergone minor elective procedures at the same hospital over the past year. Crucially, all these patients had something in common. They were single, middle-aged, lived alone, and had suffered from unexpected, rapidly progressive terminal illnesses, specifically aggressive rare cancers shortly after their operations. And the doctor who performed all the procedures, including the final biopsy, that confirmed the diagnosis for each victim, Dr. Elias Thorne. The file also contained a chilling brief audio clip, a muffled recording of Mark's voice discussing medical insurance payouts. The policy is double indemnity for this specific terminal diagnosis, Mark. It's clean. Dawn. My emotional reaction shifted from mere terror to cold visceral shock. Mark wasn't just a threat. He was part of an organized insurance fraud ring using minor elective surgeries as a cover to introduce a potent, undetectable carcinogenic agent. Dr. Thorne wasn't trying to scare me. He was trying to save me from the fate of his previous victims, realizing he was the one who had accidentally turned me into the next target. The M was Mark. The shadow I saw was him making final arrangements. The discovery galvanized me. I was no longer just running. I was holding the key to exposing a systematic series of murders. I knew I couldn't trust the local police yet. My immediate action was to create an unassailable record. Triple backup. I copied the files onto 2 brand new encrypted flash drives and uploaded the compressed folder to 3 different secure cloud-based storage services using the motel's VPN and the burner phone's hotspot. Physical evidence. I took time-stamped photographs of the original flash drive and the prescription note. My gaze was focused, my expression grim. I felt a surge of professional competence. My technical writing background was finally paying off in the most macabre way possible. Contacting external authorities. I bypassed local authorities entirely. Using an anonymous email address, I sent a coded message with a link to one of the encrypted cloud files to a former colleague who now works for the FBI's cybercrimes unit in a distant state, only specifying that it was urgent evidence of high-level medical fraud and homicide. I signed it only with my initials, ensuring my identity remained protected for now. I understood why Dr. Thorne risked everything. He was the one who performed the surgeries. He was the primary suspect if this ever came to light. He wasn't a murderer. He was a coerced participant, now trying to atone for his actions by saving one life mine. The realization that I was the last person he could save, and that Mark knew my routine perfectly, confirmed the severity of the danger. I had to disappear immediately. I had minutes, not hours. The discovery of the insurance fraud ring and the sheer malice of Mark's involvement extinguished any residual fear, replacing it with a focused, survivalist resolve. I couldn't just wait for the FBI to analyze the data. I had to disappear immediately, but not without leaving a small, disruptive farewell. The key to survival was misdirection. I needed Mark to believe I was exactly where I should have been, at home recuperating, or perhaps just running late. The scent. I drove back toward my apartment complex, stopping 2 blocks away, the same spot from the night before. I took the jacket I had worn in the hospital and placed it conspicuously on the passenger seat, along with a half-empty bottle of prescription pain relievers. I left the car unlocked, engine off. This would make it look like I had rushed home, parked, and left everything behind in a panic, suggesting I was nearby and disoriented, an easy target. The noise. I used the burner phone to call my landline at the apartment. Mark, or whoever was inside, would answer or at least hear the insistent ringing. Then I texted him from an anonymous number. "Call me back. Emergency." I left the pills at home, and the pain is unbearable. This maneuver, though risky, bought me a critical window. Mark would assume I was close, desperate, and focused on recovery, not investigation. He would prioritize finding me nearby rather than checking my communications or driving records. The emotion guiding this act was pure calculated strategy, stripped of panic. I abandoned my car and began my escape on foot. My destination was the nearest regional train station, a place where cash payments and foot traffic make tracking difficult. I knew the back alleys of this city well from my morning runs. My body, despite the post-operative discomfort, moved with a surprising new efficiency fueled by adrenaline. As I navigated the narrow, shadowy passages, I thought about Mark's pattern. He used victims who lived alone and whose movements were predictable. He thrived on the assumption that nobody would notice the small, quiet disappearances. My defiance was a fundamental disruption to his system. I reached the train station just as a commuter train was boarding. I paid cash for a ticket to the state capital, a city far enough away to afford anonymity and close enough to major government offices. Boarding the train, I chose a seat in the middle carriage, near a family the ultimate deterrent to a discreet attacker. Sitting on that train watching the city lights, my former city, my former life recede, I felt the first wave of grief and relief. I had lost my home, my peace and my stable identity, but I had saved my life. My expression in the reflection of the dark window was one of absolute exhaustion, but also quiet triumph. I had secured the evidence, warned the authorities, and escaped the trap. Just as the train pulled away, the burner phone vibrated. It was a text from the anonymous number I had contacted the FBI colleague with, "Received, analyzing. Stay dark. You're safe for now." The message was the anchor I desperately needed. I powered down the burner phone and threw it into the trash receptacle at the end of the carriage. I was officially untraceable. The game had shifted. Mark was now looking for a vulnerable patient who left her keys in the car, while Clara was miles away armed with the evidence that would send him and Dr. Thorne to prison. The train journey was the longest, most terrifying night of my life. Curled up in the seat, listening to the rhythmic clicking of the wheels, my mind finally processed the magnitude of the danger I had escaped. My identity as the unassuming technical writer was irrevocably replaced by that of the key witness and fugitive. Upon arriving at the state capitol, my first priority wasn't rest, but establishing secure, continuous contact with my former colleague, Sarah, at the FBI. I knew I couldn't walk into a field office. I found an internet cafe in a busy anonymous district and used a temporary VPN to access the encrypted email account. Sarah's response was brief, professional, and chilling. "The data is consistent with cold cases in 3 other states. You are a target of extraordinary value. We are launching a task force. Do not contact any law enforcement directly. We will contact you using a prearranged secure line." She provided me with a series of coded instructions and the details for a secure Dropbox location, a locker at a major transit hub, where I would eventually leave the physical evidence, the original flash drive, and the note. The level of organized crime, hinted at by cold cases in 3 other states, made my body tense with the strain of this new reality. This wasn't just Mark and the doctor. This was a network. My gaze was constantly sweeping the cafe, analyzing every face for the slightest hint of recognition. I felt the urgent need to maintain my low-profile existence. My role as defined by the FBI was terrifyingly passive: stay hidden, stay alive, and wait. Then an unexpected breakthrough occurred, originating from the source of the danger itself. While monitoring local news feeds via the cafe computer, I saw a headline: Dr. Elias Thorne found deceased in apparent suicide. My emotional reaction was a mixture of shock and a sharp spike of fear. Suicide? Or was Mark cleaning up loose ends? The news report, though vague, suggested a large volume of sedatives. This confirmed the immediate danger was reduced, but also highlighted Mark's ruthless efficiency. Dr. Thorne hadn't just tried to save me. He had put a permanent lethal target on his own back by contacting me. His death was the breakthrough. It confirmed to Mark that someone knew. But crucially, it led Mark to believe that the evidence died with Thorne, who would naturally be assumed to be the ringleader. Mark would think I was still running scared, with only a vague warning, not hard evidence. This gave me the crucial advantage. I was the ghost holding the truth, while Mark was confidently covering his tracks. The death of the doctor bought me precious time to coordinate with Sarah without the immediate pressure of a hitman on my heels. I knew I couldn't stop now. For the sake of Dr. Thorne, who paid the ultimate price to save me, and for the sake of all the other victims whose deaths were dismissed as tragic illnesses, I had to see this through. My hands gripped the edge of the computer desk. I made a solemn promise. Mark's fraud ring would be dismantled, and the truth would finally surface. The time had come to stop waiting and start acting. I couldn't remain a ghost forever. I needed to move from a defensive posture to an offensive one, drawing Mark out into the open on my terms. Using my background in technical writing and my new knowledge of secure communications, I collaborated with Sarah to design the perfect trap. The objective was simple: lure Mark to a public monitored location where his actions could be documented, securing the final piece of evidence needed for an airtight federal case. The lure would be the physical evidence. Mark needed to believe the original flash drive, the one containing the definitive proof of his fraud scheme, was about to fall into the wrong hands. I sent an anonymous, untraceable email to the insurance company Mark used. The email contained a cryptic message deliberately designed to look like a desperate blackmail attempt from someone close to Dr. Thorne. I have the proof of the double indemnity claims IDM. $50K for the drive by midnight tonight. Drop location: the Old Mill parking garage. Level P4, lockbox 7. No police. I knew Mark would intercept this. He wouldn't risk the insurance company handling it. And he certainly wouldn't risk me walking away with $50K. He would view this as a low-risk opportunity to recover the evidence and eliminate the final witness, me. The FBI task force, coordinated by Sarah, was in position. Hidden cameras were installed in the lockbox area of level P4, and surveillance teams were stationed on surrounding levels, maintaining strict distance to avoid alerting the ex-cop. My role was the most dangerous. I had to be visible enough to confirm I was the source of the blackmail, but not accessible enough for him to grab me. I arrived at the Old Mill parking garage exactly at 11:30 p.m. I wore a heavy coat, a hat, and kept my face partially obscured by a scarf. I went to the opposite side of the lockbox area near the service elevator. The atmosphere in the cold, echoing garage was thick with tension. Every shadow felt like a threat. At 11:55 p.m., the tension broke. A dark, unmarked SUV pulled onto level P4. Out stepped Mark. His usual neighborly smile was gone, replaced by a chillingly focused, hard expression. He wore a nondescript jacket, but his eyes were darting everywhere, scanning the perimeter, with the ingrained vigilance of a retired officer who knew exactly what cover looked like. He walked straight to lockbox 7. As he fumbled with the key, I executed my part of the plan. I stepped out of the shadow just enough for him to catch a glimpse of my silhouette and the distinctive scarf I always wore. He saw me. His gaze snapped up his body language, transforming instantly from cautious predator to raging hunter. He recognized my silhouette immediately. "Clara, you stupid girl," he snarled, abandoning the lockbox and sprinting toward me, his hands balled into fists. I didn't run. I stood my ground, raised the burner phone, and pressed play. The crackling audio clip of his voice discussing the double indemnity claims echoed clearly in the cavernous garage. "The policy is double indemnity for this specific terminal diagnosis, Mark. It's clean." Mark stopped dead in his tracks, his face contorted in a mask of pure shock and disbelief. Before he could regain his composure, the surveillance teams moved in. 2 unmarked vans screeched to a halt. Doors flew open, and 3 agents led by a stern-faced woman rushed toward him, shouting orders. "FBI, freeze, drop to the ground!" The look of absolute devastating defeat on his expression was the final satisfying confirmation of my victory. The swift professional intervention by the FBI ended the physical threat, but the aftermath of the confrontation unfolded over the following weeks, bringing both closure and a terrifying look at the scope of the conspiracy. Mark, realizing he had been caught on camera, attempting to retrieve the blackmail money and eliminate the witness, crumbled quickly. His interrogation led to the unraveling of the entire insurance fraud ring. Mark was indeed the ring's enforcer, identifying targets, tracking routines, and leveraging his ex-police network to keep the deaths quiet and expedite the insurance payouts. The motive was purely financial. The ring targeted individuals with large, often forgotten life insurance policies with specific riders like the double indemnity clause I had heard, which paid out handsomely for specific terminal illnesses. Mark and Dr. Thorne, along with the shady insurance broker they recruited, executed the scheme. The elective surgery was the perfect cover, allowing Thorne, the trusted professional, to administer the slow-acting, undetectable toxin. My emotional state during this revelation was one of immense, chilling clarity. The kindness Mark showed was a twisted form of predatory vetting. The cookies weren't neighborly gestures. They were assessments of my habits and vulnerability. The moment I told him about the surgery, I had unknowingly sealed my fate. My sense of disgust at his betrayal was now mixed with the satisfaction of justice. I had not just survived. I had dismantled an organized serial murder ring. Mark and his accomplices were formally charged with multiple counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and large-scale insurance fraud. My testimony, combined with the comprehensive digital evidence I secured, made the case ironclad. Dr. Thorne's death was officially ruled a suicide, albeit under duress, solidifying the narrative that he was the weak link who cracked under the pressure of the ring and chose to save one victim before taking his own life. The apartment I once considered my sanctuary was now a crime scene irrevocably tainted by the atmosphere of attempted murder. I made the immediate decision to sell everything. The grief over the loss of my home was overshadowed by the profound relief that I would never have to walk past Mark's door again. My isolation was not just broken. It was permanently ended by the necessity of moving and starting completely fresh. Before I left the region for good, I contacted Dr. Thorne's family anonymously. I sent them a substantial, untraceable gift of money. A small portion of the reward money I received, along with a note that read, "He saved my life, and for that he is a hero. Find peace." It was the only way I could honor the man who in his last moments chose redemption over self-preservation, proving that even the most compromised individuals can sometimes choose light over darkness. The immediate danger was over, but the resolution was not about returning to the comfortably unremarkable life I once knew. It was about defining a completely new one, built on vigilance and resilience. The greatest lesson I learned was the absolute necessity of challenging the facade of normalcy. My entire worldview had been predicated on the idea that professional boundaries and neighborly kindness equal safety. I learned that trust, particularly in isolated environments, must be earned through evidence, not proximity. The most profound growth came from embracing my innate hypervigilance, which I had always viewed as a flaw rooted in trauma. In reality, it was my superpower. That nervous instinct to spot discrepancies, to notice the unnatural stillness in Dr. Thorne's eyes, and to act on the smallest piece of nonverbal communication saved my life. I stopped fighting my protective instincts and started using them as a strength. My emotional state stabilized significantly after the arrests. The trauma of the near-death experience was still present, but it was countered by the incredible empowerment of knowing I had outsmarted a serial killer. The resolution wasn't just about justice for Mark. It was about self-validation for Clara. I had successfully managed a high-stakes life-or-death crisis using my intellect and discipline. I am no longer the victim of a past car crash. I am the survivor who defeated an active threat. I relocated across the country to a large, bustling city, the very opposite of the quiet anonymity I once sought. Paradoxically, the sheer volume of people in a metropolis offered a better kind of anonymity. I used the reward money and the proceeds from the sale of my apartment to start a new chapter. I didn't return to technical writing. Instead, I channeled my newfound strategic and analytical skills into risk assessment consulting. I now work with small businesses and private clients, teaching them how to secure their digital and physical boundaries. My professional work is now explicitly tied to the very lessons I learned in the dark. My relationship with people has fundamentally changed. I make friends, but I maintain deep, firm boundaries. I now live in a highly secured building with a robust community, ensuring I am never isolated again. I maintain regular casual contact with neighbors, not out of a need for security, but as a deliberate act of community building that resists the kind of isolation Mark exploited. The ultimate sign of growth is my relationship with Sarah, my FBI contact. We maintain a secure communication line and have become genuine friends. She represents the new type of trust I allow myself. Trust based on shared mission competency and verified action. The simple lesson the doctor's note taught me, don't go home, run, didn't just save my life. It gave me permission to leave behind a life that was too small for the person I was always meant to be. I ran toward a life defined by courage, action, and the unwavering commitment to never be a passive target again. The federal reward for my assistance in dismantling a multi-state criminal enterprise, combined with the settlement money from the insurance companies Mark defrauded, was substantial. It was enough to ensure my financial freedom for life. However, this money wasn't a windfall. It was a constant, heavy reminder of the cost of survival. The reward money felt less like a gift and more like a permanent marker of the events. Every dollar represented the calculated risk Dr. Thorne took the lives Mark extinguished and the complete annihilation of my former peace. My emotion regarding the money was complex gratitude for the freedom it provided, but a constant sense of taint. I immediately established a strict protocol for the fund's investment for independence. The majority was placed into diversified anonymous investment funds, ensuring the money was working silently to secure my future, maintaining my independence without drawing attention. Charity for awareness. I established a small anonymous foundation dedicated to funding research into undetectable toxins and supporting victims of medical malpractice/fraud. This was my way of neutralizing the taint, turning the dirty money into a tool for future prevention. The small acts of honor. As mentioned, the anonymous payment to Dr. Thorne's family was essential. Additionally, I quietly paid off the medical bills for several of Mark's identified victims, surviving distant relatives, acknowledging the hidden financial burden the fraud had placed on them. This money became the engine of my new life, but it was an engine powered by trauma. It dictated my every move, forcing me into a higher level of security and paranoia. My body language in public remained reserved, guarded, reflecting the constant awareness that a fortune could make me a target for new, different kinds of threats. The money bought me safety, but it solidified my need for absolute anonymity. I couldn't share my success, my struggles, or my past with anyone in my new life. Every new friend or colleague was only given the carefully constructed narrative of Clara the consultant. The real Clara, the one who confronted a killer in a dark parking garage, remained hidden. This necessary secrecy was the final lasting consequence of the note. It meant my relationships, while genuine on the surface, would always have a profound barrier. I had grown into a formidable person, but I had to navigate the world alone with that knowledge. The only way to ease the solitude was through my work. When I taught clients about physical security protocols and digital hygiene, I was not just teaching them, I was processing my own survival. The money gave me the platform to transform my personal nightmare into a valuable protective expertise for others, finally allowing me to feel that the terrible event had yielded some tangible protective benefit for the world. My life may have changed forever. I lost my innocence, and my old life, But I gained something far more valuable: clarity and survival. The note the doctor handed me, "Don't go home, run," wasn't just a warning. It was the start of an incredible story of betrayal, cunning, and ultimately triumph over calculated evil. It was the moment I realized that the greatest dangers often hide in the mundane, wearing the mask of kindness. But this isn't just my story. This is a story about vigilance, about trusting your gut, and about what happens when an ordinary person refuses to become a victim. Now I want to hear from you. What would you have done if a trusted doctor handed you a cryptic warning telling you to run? Would you have stayed, or would you have immediately fled? If this story of survival and betrayal held you on the edge of your seat, smash that button-hitting like. Tells us you want more deep dive psychological thrillers like this one. Don't let the next chilling true crime or survival story pass you by. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you get notified the moment our next video drops. Join the discussion. Head down to the comment section right now and tell me what was the biggest piece of evidence I almost missed. Or, what do you think happened to the broker? I read every single comment. Finally, if you know someone who loves true crime, psychological thrillers, or stories of ultimate survival against the odds, please share this video with them. Help us bring this terrifying tale of fraud and fear to a wider audience. From being a small-town technical writer to taking down a multi-state murder for insurance ring, this journey proved one thing: you are stronger than you think. Thank you for watching, and stay safe. Remember, always look twice at the people you trust.